Today, I'm going to show you how you can automate your app idea research using Zapier. You already know how to find great keyword opportunities in the App Store, video over here, but that's just half the battle. You also have to take a look at the apps that are ranking for that keyword and see if they're making money, if they're under optimized, which means that you can rank for it, if those apps have a lot of ratings and reviews, and there are other indicators that you can look at to boost your confidence that your app can indeed rank. I've actually got more notes on this. Link in the description below if you want to check that out. But just going through the 4 steps we just talked about, it's a pretty manual process. And it's okay doing it for a couple of keywords, but when you have a long list of keywords to go through, it can be pretty time consuming. Recently, I've discovered that I can cut down on a lot of that time if I use automation and AI with Zapier to do a lot of that preliminary analysis for me. All I have to do is paste the keyword into the spreadsheet. It triggers an automation that I've set up that goes out, uses AI, and it does the research, and then it pastes the results into the spreadsheet for me. And then I can just go in and cherry pick which ones look promising to me and dive deeper. It saves a ton of time. Let me show you how you can set up this automation for yourself. So I personally use Zapier to do all of my automations and workflows, including those that I use to run the YouTube channel and Code with Chris as a business. In fact, take a look at this. I just saw this the other day, and over the course of 30 days, I ran 4,000 automations. Every day, not hundreds, but like 1 to 200 tasks are being automated. So that is pretty cool. I use this a lot. Now, if you're unfamiliar with a tool like this, it allows you to create automations between different apps for them to work together. And you can do it in a visual way by just dragging and dropping. You don't need any sort of coding knowledge. So it allows different apps to work together. Now, to be completely transparent, Zapier is actually sponsoring this video, but as you've seen, I've used this personally since 2018. They actually want me to compare it to n8n, which I haven't really used. This is a newer tool on the market that allows you to do kind of the same thing. Anyways, let's get building with Zapier, and then we'll talk about n8n afterwards. All right, step 1, click on the link in the upper right-hand corner or in the description below. You're going to arrive at this page. Then you're going to click on the sign up button in the upper right corner. After that, enter in your email name. You do not need a credit card. You are going to be creating a free account, and you're going to be able to follow along. And then after you go through the 2 steps, I think it was, you're going to arrive at this page, which is the home page. Now, first thing is in the upper left corner, you're going to click on the create button and choose Zap. And this is just their terminology for a workflow. Now, each workflow has 2 basic components. The first is trigger, which is what needs to happen for this workflow to run. In our earlier example with the App Idea Research Assistant, the trigger was whenever I add a new keyword to my spreadsheet. And the second component to a basic workflow is an action. And this is where you can connect any number of their 7,000 apps to do something as a result of the trigger. The trigger oftentimes will pass information to the next step, which is the action. So again, relating it back to our App Idea Research Assistant, it would take the keyword and it would pass it on to the next step, which I want to use AI to then go process that keyword and do some research on it. Now, that can be your basic automation workflow, just 2 steps, trigger and action, but you can get more complicated than that by adding additional actions. Often you can chain together multiple apps in between different apps. You can also add steps to process the information before passing it on to the next step. You can also have conditional statements, which they call paths. So if the data is this, then go maybe use this app and do this. If it's something else, then use a different app and do something else. And this is really useful because you can orchestrate all of these different apps to work together without having to code anything. All of the APIs are kept up to date, your credentials are secure, and it just allows you to focus on your app or focus on your business. Anyways, enough about that. So that's your basic primer to what a workflow is. Now let's go ahead and build something out. Next, let's go to docs.google.com and create a new Google Sheet. Now I'm choosing to use Google Sheets because I know they have a trigger right here for when you add a new row in the spreadsheet. And that's going to trigger this workflow. Since Zapier has connections to over 7,000 apps, if you have a different spreadsheet software you like to use, you can go ahead and search for that app and see if it exists there. For this demo, we are going to use Google Sheets. So I'm just going to call this App Idea Researcher V2. And then we're going to have 3 columns. So the first column is keyword, and this is where you're going to put the keyword that you want to research. So through Astro and the keyword research process I showed in this video, we use the process to find low competition keywords with decent search volume, potential app opportunities. And then we are going to put those keywords into here for further research. I want the research to give me a single score so that I can scan it easily and see which ones I should target. Ones with a higher score means a better opportunity. And then I want an explanation based on the criteria that I am going to tell the AI to research, explain the results of that research and why it gave it this score. It's a little more objective than that. So I actually ask it to look for 4 different criteria. Actually, let's launch this spreadsheet and you can see. So I asked it to look specifically if there are apps with 100 rating or less. Are there apps that do not target this keyword in the title and subtitle? And number 3, are there apps that are ranking that have recently been released? And then lastly, number 4 is, are there apps that are making money? And these 4 criteria, it's not comprehensive. I did this more as a proof of concept, just to make sure that this worked, this process. So we can definitely expand this to even more criteria to get a more detailed research process. But let's just set it up with what I've done here because I know it works. And you can just expand on my demo and put any sort of app criteria that you want actually, and you can calculate the score differently. For me, I just calculated it as for each yes to the 4 questions, give it a point for the score. So you have a max of 4 points and a minimum of 0 points. So now that we've set up our spreadsheet, we can go back to Zapier and connect this workflow to that spreadsheet. So let's go ahead and click on this trigger and then let's choose Google Sheets. And if this is your first time using Zapier, you're going to have to connect to Google Sheets. So you're going to hit this sign in right here. And then you're going to sign into the Google account that has access to that Google Sheet. So let me go ahead and do that. All right, so I've just signed in. So you can see here now that it recognizes my account. And now I'm going to choose the event that is going to trigger this workflow to kick off. And we'll choose this one, new or updated spreadsheet row. So that means whenever we add a new keyword to our app idea spreadsheet, it is going to fire. Now let's go ahead and add a keyword. I'm just going to make something up right here. Let's just say shadow, because I've recently looked into that example. And I'm adding this here because it's going to allow us to test the connection. So let's choose continue. And we're going to choose the specific spreadsheet, which we created. And you can see here, this is the V2 that I just created. Worksheet, because each workbook has multiple sheets. And by default, it's just going to be sheet 1, as you can see down here. So that's what we're going to choose, sheet 1. And then trigger column is going to be keyword. Now, if you make an update and it's not reflected here, it doesn't pick it up, you can always hit refresh and it'll just read the spreadsheet again and tell you the columns here. So let's choose keyword, continue, and it's going to test it. Let's hit test trigger. And it should pick up the change that we've just done. You see here, shadow work. Right, so we're going to continue with this record for testing the workflow. If it didn't enter in any test data here, it will probably give you some demo records to test with instead. But I find that it works better if you have some actual data you're using. So go ahead and continue with selected record. And you can just close this for now because you see this check mark right here. That means our trigger is set, it's working, and we have some test data to pass on to the next step. Now, this is where we are going to want to take that keyword and ask AI to perform some research, right? Let's click on action. There's actually this really helpful step called AI by Zapier, and you can prompt it using different models, as you can see here. So here's how you're going to use this builder. Input fields is the data that you're going to pass into this step. So in this case, that's going to be the keyword that we want the AI to analyze. So go ahead and click into it. You're going to give it a field name. So I'll just call it KW for keyword. And in here, you're going to press /, and you're going to be able to select data from a step that was before this one. In this case, it is the newer updated spreadsheet row. So we can select keyword as the piece of data that we want to work with. This is from the first step, right? We're going to hit save. And so that data is there. And the reason it says shadow work is because that is the test data that we're using. It's not always going to be shadow work. It's going to be whatever keyword triggered this automation to happen. Okay, so knowledge sources, this is optional. Every time you don't know what something is, you can always click this informational icon, and you can also ask AI to explain what it is. So that's really, really helpful, and you can ask questions and you can chat with it and further on. So they've done a really good job of making this easier. So this is the step. We're not done with it yet. To continue with it, you can hit continue. You can also expand it like this. Okay, so we're going to skip knowledge sources because that allows you to use your own custom data set that you wanted to analyze, or knowledge sources. We are interested in this part. Okay, this is the prompt that we want to send it. And I just want to copy and paste the prompt that I've already written in, and I want to explain it to you. So the first part of the prompt is search the Apple App Store for this keyword. I hit / again, and I'm going to choose that keyword once more. And then I'm going to ask AI to analyze it by asking it the following questions. So let me paste that here. Okay, and determine the following things. Number one, are there any apps in the top 10 ranking apps that have 100 ratings or less? Yes or no. Next, I'm going to ask it, are there any apps in the top 10 ranking apps that do not have the keyword in the title and subtitle of the app listing? Yes or no. Are there any apps in the top 10 ranking apps that have been released in the last 6 months? And number four, are there any apps in the top 10 ranking apps that are generating revenue? Yes or no. And then for each yes, give a point to the score. Add it all up and output that number to the output field score. Now, what I'm referring to is this output field. So let's click on that and add score. Now, the field type should be a number. What you're specifying here is, what do you want this step to output? I want to have, at the end of the day, a score and an explanation. So I'm going to also add that explanation. And I'm going to say it's required. So we have two output fields from what we want the AI to give us. Now, the last part of the prompt is to ask it to explain itself and output that to the explanation field. Okay, next, output a text explanation, which is a summary of your findings, to the output field explanation, and also include how you tallied up the score and why it is that number. And that's it. So now we can go ahead and test this. Let's go ahead and hit generate preview, and it's going to attempt to run this prompt with the test keyword that we passed it. So it's got a score of 3, and it says, yes, there were apps with 100 ratings or less. Yes, there are some apps that did not have the keyword in their title or subtitle. Yes, there were apps released in the last 6 months. And yes, there were some apps generating revenue. Now notice here that it added the number of yeses wrong. It gave it a score of 3 points instead of 4 because there were 4 yeses here. And I'm attributing it to either my prompt is confusing or I've tried to combine too many criteria into a single prompt. I might try in the future breaking it up into multiple AI steps instead of just one, and updating each column of the spreadsheet separately. But for now, I'm going to continue on and we can try and fix it later. Okay, so that's finished. Let's close this. And you can see the next step here has a green check mark. Now, the last thing to do is to go back and update the spreadsheet with the data. So for the next action, click on that, and we're going to choose Google Sheets. And we're going to have our account pre-filled because we chose it before. We connected that. And what we're going to want to do is update the spreadsheet. So let's just search for the event update. There we go, update spreadsheet row. Because in our spreadsheet, we've done the research and we want it to come back and update these two fields. That way, when I'm doing keyword research with Astro, I can just, whatever keywords I find, I can plop it in here, and then it's going to trigger the automation. It's going to go do its things and update these fields automatically. And I can just come back after a coffee and find the ones I want to dive into. So we're going to update spreadsheet row. So for the drive, we're going to choose the one we have that houses that spreadsheet. We're going to choose App Idea Research V2 because that is our spreadsheet. And check this out. It says possible Zap loop detected. This may cause a loop because it acts similarly to a trigger event. And this is actually really helpful detection because think about what's going to happen here. What triggers this workflow? A new or updated spreadsheet row, right? So if this third step is going to go and update these two fields, that's actually going to cause this automation to trigger again. And then it's going to do it again for shadow work. And then it's going to update it, which is going to just cause it to go into a never-ending loop. So this was an error on our part. The trigger shouldn't be new or updated spreadsheet row. It should just be new row. That way, when we go back to update that row, it's not going to re-trigger the workflow. Let's go back to step 1 and change that. It's very, very easy to do so. Click on the update step, and we are just going to choose new row right here, new spreadsheet row. Instead of this one, new or updated spreadsheet row. Okay. And that's going to fix that. So you can see that there's an alert here because we haven't gone through the 3 steps. Setup, hit continue, configure. I'm just going to have to select that again. App Idea Research V2, sheet number 1, and then test trigger. And then there's our test record. So continue with selected record. And now we have that green check mark for this step. Let's move back to the update spreadsheet row action. We can continue configuring it now. And for what row do we want to update? We want to update here, I'll show you what values are available. And then it's going to become apparent. We don't just want to update 2. Let's go to, we don't want to do static. We want to do dynamic. So we got to just change the setting here to a custom value because static means that it's always going to be whatever number you put there. And we don't always just want to update row 2. We want it to be dynamic depending on the new row that triggered it, right? So change this to custom. And then for this, again, you can do / and it's going to bring up this menu. You're going to choose the first step, which is what triggered this workflow to begin with. And you're going to choose the row ID from here. This is a dynamic field. Okay, so what are we inserting for keyword? Nothing, because we don't want to edit that. But for score, let's hit / again. And now we're going to take data from the second step. This is from the AI step. And remember, we asked AI to output it into 2 output fields, score and explanation. Well, you can find that right here. So I'm going to update the score column with the score output from this AI step. I'm going to hit / on the explanation column of my spreadsheet. And I'm going to choose step 2, and I'm going to choose that output. That's all there is to it. We can ignore the rest. Let's hit continue, and then let's go ahead and test it. You're going to see right here the data that it's going to send to the spreadsheet. It's going to update that spreadsheet, which is the ID, worksheet 0, which is the first worksheet, row number 2. It's going to update the score column with 3 and explanation with that. So we're going to test the step, or you can even skip it if you don't want to modify any data. But it's going to do that. Okay, it's ran its test, right? And if we go back to the spreadsheet, you can see it's outputted all of this. To make it easier to read, I'm just going to highlight this column, go to Format, and change how it wraps so that it's like that. And again, you can create as many output fields as you want in this step. If we go back to expand it, see how we had these two outputs fields? You can add as many output fields as you want, depending on what criteria you want to do. And you can even break it out to multiple AI steps. For example, if we wanted to run another AI analysis for some other piece of data, maybe we want to see if the keyword is a trending keyword, if there's more search volume for this, and it's growing in the right direction, we can add another step and then run that prompt there, output it as a separate field. And then in this step, when we're updating the different columns, you would just hit / and then select the data from that step instead to output. And if you don't want to get confused by the different steps you have, you can see how if you have two of these AI steps, they're named the same thing, you can always rename it. You can hit this little pencil. You can say this would be initial analysis. And then for this step, we can also choose to rename it. This could be like trend analysis or something like that. And that's how you would go about building your workflow. So for now, I am going to remove this extra step. I'm going to remove this extra action. And all you have to do is just hit publish. And it's going to be live. And then now, if we want to put in something else, plant identifier, perhaps, it is going to trigger that workflow and it's going to come in and do its thing. Let's see how it is going to work actually. So it'll take a moment to do its thing, but you can always, let's give this Zap a title first. Let's call App Idea Researcher V2. And you can go home, you can go to Zap History, and then you can see how things were run. So it looks like it hasn't run just yet. All right, so it ended up happening, but taking about 5 minutes or so. So it works. If we go back to Zap History, let's just refresh the page here. You can see that it ran automatically. And if you click into it, you can get the results of the run. You can peek into each step to see what data went in and what data came out. So you have data in and data out. And so this gives you a really clear view of what's happened in your automation. And yeah, this addition is wrong because it gave us a total of 2 points for the first 2 yes answers. But for some reason, it didn't include the 4th yes as a point. So I think perhaps there is something wrong with the way that I'm prompting it. That's something that we can definitely improve upon. However, I think this concept is amazing and it'll save a lot of time. Just being able to update your spreadsheet, have it do different types of research, plot the results back on the spreadsheet for you, and then it is kind of like a pre-filter. This way you can go through and test a lot more keywords and really narrow down on the app ideas with the most potential for you. So Zapier isn't the only tool that you can use to accomplish this AI automation. Another tool that gets talked about often is n8n. So I want to talk a little bit about comparisons. I don't have firsthand experience using n8n, so I want to be transparent. The other piece of information you should keep in mind is that this video is sponsored by Zapier. Third piece of information is that I have been a Zapier customer since 2018, using my own money. I still am using my own money to pay for this. And you saw how heavily I use it with my usage history. So just know that I am probably biased towards Zapier, but the information that I present to you now is going to be as objective as possible. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about plans and pricing, because from what I can gather, Zapier has a free plan that you can use forever and a 14-day free trial for the paid plans, whereas n8n does not have a free plan. And once you go through the 14-day trial, you have to start paying to use it. Now you can use it for free because n8n is open source software, which means that you can set up your own server. You're going to have to pay for server hosting. If you have your own computer, you can set up it locally, I suppose. And you can use n8n, but you have to be a little technical to be able to self-host it. Otherwise, you're going to be using it on the cloud, basically managed by n8n. Zapier does not have that option. It is only managed, so you cannot self-host Zapier. Whereas with n8n, if you're a little bit technical, you can self-host it. Now, it has these scary prices here for business and enterprise. I'm not sure why, because you can self-host this open source software for free, aside from server costs and being technical enough to set it up from the get-go. So I think in that regard, Zapier gets the point. Let me talk about some other benefits and differences I see for Zapier. And I know I'm trying not to be biased here, but I'm just going to be stating facts. Zapier has been around for a long time, but they're not one of those companies that have just stayed stagnant. In fact, they're on the bleeding edge and they're pivoting really heavily into AI, which is why they're sponsoring a lot of these videos in my channel and things like that. So despite having the experience, the size of the company, the size of the team, all of the compliance things that they have had to go through, essentially just all of those years for running and growing their company into, they are still on the bleeding edge. And the benefits of being an older company is they have more integrations when it comes to an automation tool. You want to have as many integration with as many different apps as possible. They've got 8,000, but when we were building the workflow, I think when we were searching through the apps, it said 7,000 there, but 7,000 to 8,000, let's say. Whereas here, right on the homepage, because n8n is a newer product, I think they only have 500. Again, I haven't used it personally. I'm just reading what's on the homepage. So that's a big difference to me. The other thing is that I know for a fact, and I've looked into this, is that Zapier has a lot more of these compliance and certification things for security than n8n does, probably because they're also a bigger company and they've been around longer, so they've had time to get certified for all these different things. I don't know if this matters much to me, being just like a small solo entrepreneur type of deal, but if you are a company or you run like a bigger company, I'm sure that would also play into your decision. So here it talks a little bit about that. So you can talk about how secure and enterprise ready it is. You take a look. The last thing I'll say about the two tools is that I get the sense that n8n is more for technical people and technical teams. You can use code. For Zapier, you can also use code. And in fact, I've had steps in my Zapier workflows where I have had to write JavaScript just to do something custom that I wanted. So there is that ability, but I think Zapier focuses more on not having to code and to be beginner friendly, because one of the first things they rolled out when it came to AI was to use AI to build your Zap. You know how we created it manually? You can actually, when you create a Zap, you can actually just use Copilot here and describe what your workflow should be, and it'll build it out for you. I don't know how good of a job it does. I haven't used this, but they do a really good job of helping you along the way. So we saw some of that when we were configuring these apps. If you're not sure what a field does, for example, like here, you can just ask AI to explain what that field is. Or I've encountered this where when you're testing the step and you hit an error, you can also ask AI to troubleshoot that error right from this interface, and it'll attempt to fix that for you. So I think they've made it very user-friendly in terms of people who are not technical or don't want to code. And so that's what I really like about it as well. At the end of the day, you can choose what tool you want to use, but I find these automation tools really, really helpful. And you've seen my own usage. This is my own account, how much I use it. every day. Like I'm not actively using it because I've set up all of these workflows to fire on different events. So all of this is just happening day to day without my intervention, helping my business and channel run smoothly. So I use this stuff quite a bit. Again, if you want to create an account, try out some automation for free, click on the link in the upper right corner, check it out in the description below, and get started with a free account. So I hope this was helpful to you. I think I'm definitely going to build upon this app idea researcher workflow in the future and improve it, because right now it's a little bit janky. It's not working exactly how I want it to, but I think I can get it to a pretty good spot. And then it's going to ultimately save me a lot of time. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.